Justin?
Because if we started this, yeah.
Vice President Sadef?
The 11th of May 2020 Planning Committee meeting can start. It is now 6:39.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, guys. Just a moment.
Do we have the agenda?
You can go ahead and do the, you can go ahead and do the call to order. Sorry, I was so ready for everything and then that got me lost.
No problem. So I am
sorry.
calling to order the 11th of May 2020 Planning Committee meeting. The time is 6:39. Madam Secretary, can you call the order of business?
Yes. President Alvarado is absent. Vice President Suda?
Yes.
And Director Weiner? Not here. Director Stanley?
Yes.
Director Zepeda?
I'm here.
Okay. And while I'm messing around, I'm sorry about this. I'm not making it a class act tonight. Let's see. Yes, we need to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance or a minute of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of
America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of agenda order. Any member of the board committee may request an agenda item be postponed, removed, or heard out of order. Any item may not be added to the agenda unless it meets the requirements of an emergency situation as defined in Government Code Section 54956.5.
Madam Chair, before I make a motion to approve the agenda, may I ask if, because we now have quorum, so was this meeting posted as a board meeting or is it still a committee meeting because of that quorum?
So Director Zepeda, the meeting is noticed as a special meeting. So what would happen if the president was in attendance? The president would call the meeting to the order and then pass it over to the chair. And since since the vice president is here, is Vice President Sadef, she can control the meeting, and now she is acting as Vice President Sadef. You also the chair of this the planning committees. Right, and so then you would be able to lead the meeting as the chair, but now we're essentially acting as a special meeting now that there are 3 board members present.
So it was agendized as a special meeting then, not as a committee meeting?
It is both. The way it's been agendized is that it was a
Special meeting of the
planning committee.
Special meeting of the planning committee. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just want to make sure because that's our current process is if we have 3 board of directors.
Right.
That we have quorum. So, okay. Well, with that, then I make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Dr. Stanley, something's happening. Here. Is Director Stanley on?
Yes.
I need a second.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Are you seconding?
Yes, we can hear you.
Was that a second?
Oh, okay.
You actually have to say it.
I second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a proper second. Madam Secretary. Would you please call for the vote?
Yes, I will. President Alvarado, not attending. Vice President Suda,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Zepeda,
Yes.
and Director Weiner is absent. Okay,
Next item.
the next item is public comment. I did not receive any. Did you want me to go ahead and read this? It doesn't look like anybody's on.
I don't believe so.
You said yes or no?
No, ma'am.
Okay. The next item is the consent calendar. And matters of the consent calendar are considered routine and will be approved without discussion. Prior to approval of the consent calendar, a member of the board committee may request that an item be removed for discussion. If a member of the board would like to speak to an item on the consent calendar, the member should email the board clerk, which is me, prior to board committee taking action. If the meeting is a study session, the planning committee will recommend the consent items for approval at the next regular board meeting. So section 4A is the minutes. Approve, recommend board approval for the minutes of April 13th, 2020 planning committee meeting.
What
I
say
so
you?
move.
Beautiful.
I so move.
Thank you. Director Zepeda?
I second.
Thank you very much. Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Secretary, call please.
Call the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Director, President Alvarado is absent. Vice President Suda,
Yes, ma'am.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Zepeda,
Yes.
and Director Weiner, who is absent.
Well, I don't know if he would be absent. He's just not part of this committee.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And neither is President Alvarado. The only two committee
Okay.
members technically are Chair Sudeth and myself, and then we have
Okay,
other board members that can attend and participate.
okay, okay.
But
Thank
then-
you for that. I appreciate that.
And Director Stanley is actually the alternate. She attends.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. I was looking for that word. I was like, forget the word.
She's an alternate.
well, thank you for updating me on that. I appreciate it.
All right, next item.
Next item is number 5, discussion. A, review draft of updated board policies and procedures.
Okay,
Right.
so, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was just going to introduce this item, and then Justin and I will both take questions and comments as they come up. So just a bit of background. If you'll remember, in July, the board approved the creation of an ad hoc committee, which included Director Zepeda and Director Weiner, President Weiner at that time, to review and make recommendations on an updated board policy and procedures document. That item was the recommendations from that ad hoc were then presented to the full board on February 5th. And they provided with you, they provided in that report a red line version that we had from the existing board policies and procedures to their recommendations. The version that went to the board also included some of the changes that staff has been working on. We've been looking at this policy for quite some time. While we've made some changes here and there, the document has been very outdated for many years, and it doesn't reflect some of the current practices. Some of the titles are outdated, and just it hasn't been updated and modernized to really reflect sort of where the board is currently and the values and sort of practices of the board at this point. So when we presented this item on February 5th, I mentioned that staff still had additional comments, and we have been working through those comments for quite some time. Primarily the changes that you see are informed by Sherry Kelly, who was here for several months in the acting board clerk role. Sherry Kelly, if you remember, has many years of experience, has worked in many organizations. So she took a very thorough review of the document and provided proposed changes. Both Justin and I have proposed changes. So what you see this evening actually is not a red line version of the existing document, but a really very new document, because it became so difficult to present a red line version with the ad hoc committee recommendations plus staff's recommendations. So it's essentially a new document, although many of the same items are included. They're just in different order, so it wasn't going to be easy to provide a red line version. So anyway, that is basically the overview I wanted to give to you. Staff is not ready yet to present this to the full board, even post the comments from the ad hoc, but we will plan to get this in front of the board hopefully by the end of June or early July with your recommendations and then staff recommendations. So with that, I just wanted to, again, give the introduction and give you kind of some background, and I will turn it back to you to discuss.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. So, before I say anything, all right. So, Zepeda.
Yeah, I had a question, and I figured out what happened with my emails. And Justin, you're probably going to get a bunch of them all of a sudden, so I apologize. They got stuck in there.
Okay.
But one of them, I did ask for a red line, and Lisa, thank you for making those comments on why a red line might be a little bit difficult to follow. But I still wanted to see something, because I made my own red line. I compared the latest, greatest version. Looks like draft version 7, at least for me, was the latest that Justin sent. I don't know, there was something sent after the 1 o'clock timeline. I compared both that document and the document that Director Wiener and I worked on. And most of the changes were there, or suggestions, I should say, between Director Wiener and myself were there. Some of them were not. And then there were some things that were removed that I think might be needed to be added back onto the policies. So maybe some of those that we can chair. I don't know how we want to approach it. If we want to approach it paragraph by paragraph, page by page, or looking at some of the suggested changes first. But I would like to make sure that Director Sudduth or Chair Sudduth also sees sort of some of the recommendations that were made from the committee, because that was the board's first motion, was to have this special committee to create. And I feel like some of them, most of them were captured again, but some of them weren't on there. So I just wanted to see if we can make sure that we at least present them so they can be talked through. Because at the board meeting, when we brought these back up, I don't think we spent time going through all of them. This was just put back into this committee.
And Director Zepeda, I can address for you too. You're right, there are a couple that were removed, and I can talk about those specifically when we get to that place.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And could I just ask, are you guys able to see any video at all right now?
No,
Nope. There's a picture of me.
I'm seeing the screen, the Zoom screen, the regular Zoom screen.
Right.
Right.
So
So we could share a screen if we.
Yeah,
would
I'm
like
thinking
to.
it might be good to share a screen of maybe maybe the current policy that is being discussed. Maybe go through it in that way.
Yeah,
Or-
I'm looking online at the policy. I'm looking on the one that was sent by email.
Yeah. Okay.
Third screen.
Okay.
I have it if you'd like me to share.
Yeah, that'd be fine. While you're doing that, Director Stanley, you had something to say?
Well, I'm sort of echoing what Director Zepeda said. I also have I was under the understanding that when the board created an ad hoc in July of last year, it was not to put two directors in charge of going through the policy. That was reserved to the planning department. Their mandate was to come up with a election policy, which didn't happen before the election, and the election was a month late, and by the time we got a review of what they did, it was all very confusing. So I don't quite understand the melding of items. I don't understand this melding. To me, some of these items should be in a director's, this is your stuff that you need to know as a director, like your compensation and your travel and whatever. That goes in one spot in our binder. It doesn't get melded in altogether in this now just generic policies and procedures. I really like the board meeting policy and procedures. And so it just sort of feels like everything's got crammed together, and some stuff got lost, and some things, it's like I have a whole lot of what happened to this thing and why are we using that word? My notes. So I'm kind of stressed out about all this, and it seems like it's rather expensive, and this is more. I mean, we can go through it tonight, I suppose, but it seems like it would make more sense to have a workshop or have some more time to actually compare the two documents, because I find it really confusing to go back and forth. So, there you go.
So, Director Stanley, if I can clarify for you, the ad hoc committee was charged with looking at the entire meeting policies and procedures. They were not tasked with looking specifically or only at the election process. They did look at that, but that was not the intent of the ad hoc committee whatsoever. They were supposed to look at the whole thing and come up with recommendations, which is what they did.
That's interesting, because when Director Alvarado was the chair of this committee last year, he made it very clear that the committee was reserving its right to review everything. So I don't quite understand.
Well, the
kind of
board
a conflict.
unanimously voted for that ad hoc creation with those members and that intent. So I don't know if things maybe just got lost in translation or over time, but the ad hoc did exactly what the board approved them to do. But that did not mean that the planning committee could not also take up the issue and look at the policy. I think the idea was that it would be two board members, one that had been existing and one that was brand new, to take a fresh look at it. But either way, I mean, both committee, the ad hoc as well as the planning committee, we have their recommendations from the ad hoc, and now we're bringing forward the combination of the ad hoc as well as the changes that staff is proposing. And I will say that there actually isn't a whole lot of things that have fallen out of the policy that were in different places. So perhaps it's the organization of it that maybe has changed a bit, and so that maybe is making you think that some things went away, or that we crammed things in here, but everything that's in here is pretty much the same thing that was here before.
Okay, because I'm finding something's missing, so I'm not.
Well, certainly,
I'm not agreeing. But whatever, we can do whatever you want to do. I'm not.
Ms. Lisa, so what I find always helpful when I write documents or when I write contracts, and when it's really difficult to write a red line, when there's such a big difference, or when there's such a huge disparity between the original and the final document is, can you just do, I would just do a high level or just do a memo documenting the differences instead of a red line. Because
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Many times it just doesn't fit. There's just not a red line, just can't happen because of the vast amount of differences and things around, and something that was written before that was in section 2 now deserves to be in section 6 just because of the flow of the document. And when you do a
Right.
red line, it doesn't match anymore. So usually, personally, when I do it, I just write a memo so that I can explain it to people of why it was changed that way. And so maybe that will help help
I think it would have helped, and we had an intent to do that. We sort of ran into some time constraints.
Sure.
The committee was anxious to get this, and we thought rather than postpone it another month, we would provide you with what we had so far, but absolutely a memo that would have done that crosswalk would have been very helpful so that you could see what had moved and that things were included. I did a comparison myself, just side by side where sections were, but it does take a little bit of time. So you're absolutely right. We would have liked to have done that if time had provided, and that would have been the better. And ultimately, that's what we will do for the full board when this comes forward, because the red line won't lend itself to an easy read.
Yeah. That's my suggestion. I just think that,
No,
yeah.
it's a great suggestion, and my apologies for not doing that, because that would have made it much easier to have this discussion.
Because I don't find that it's that much of a, I mean, I see some differences, but I also see that, yeah. I think it flows better. I do see some things that were left out from the discussion on the planning, but I also see that, but I do see why. So I think when we do the memo, maybe the why, Justin, will be included.
Yes.
And why
Sure.
it was taken out.
Sure.
Is there anything in particular, Director Zepeda, you wanted to ask about?
Sure. Should we go? I'm trying to figure out how do we
We can
chop
go through it.
this elephant? Do we go page by page, or do
Yeah.
we just
It's
look at
fine.
some of the questions? Okay.
Yeah, we can go page by page. We can go section by section. If there's something in particular you wanted to talk about, we have time.
All right. Cool. Then I'll start from the top. Then something that I noticed that was missing was the number. Board says in the previous document, it had a section for number and quorum. I'm sorry. And while we do have a quorum section in draft 7, it doesn't address, and I don't know if we need to have this, so maybe that's a reason maybe we don't need to have, how many board of directors composes our board of directors group.
Yes, that section is missing, and that we noted that, and that will be added back in. We noted that as well. So we just saw that today. So we'll put that back in.
Hey, we're on the same page. All right, then there's that whole section in the previous document. It was section 3, labeled
Right.
board of directors, and that whole section there, I think, should be added back in, just because for new board members, it would also allow them to know that process. When you're missing, when you're absent, what happens, etc. So I won't talk to it anymore. You said it is missing, we'll add it back in, then I'm good with that. Let me go to the next page here.
Are we going on one page at a time or what?
I think so. I think that's what the chair has
Yes.
said, unless
Yes.
we go any other way.
So hold on. If you're done with that page, Director Stanley, you had something on this page?
Yeah, I like, again, I'm advocating for calling this document the Board of Directors meeting policy and procedures, not just generic policies and procedures. I also like the old document where it's broken apart and it said the purpose and then the policy, so that it was much cleaner and easier to find. This jamming this all together on the new revised thing, you kind of get lost there, and you don't. It's not an easy read. Plus, I question some wording at the bottom of the last sentence in the policy. It says the following policies. Are we calling all the things that is written in here individual policies?
Well, this is just called your policies and procedures. We didn't really change that. So what we've tried to do is, because it was a combination of procedures, board meeting procedures, it outlined the responsibilities of the board. It talked about the roles and responsibilities. I mean, you call it whatever you want. I mean, we kind of kept that more or less the same. That's the exact wording that was included. And we really moved one sentence from purpose and policy to, we moved one sentence and made it one. So there's not that much of a difference between purpose and policy. I mean,
and then, all right, and then under 2.1, number C, we changed it, the word to directing the district's mission. I'm not quite sure I understand directing the district's mission. And there's nothing in here in this area right here that says how we're going to review the annual review that we go through of the mission, vision, values, and now goals. So I wonder why that's missing. And are you saying something, Lisa?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished with that, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll write that down and answer your question.
Okay, and then my last question is number D. Before we said establishing district policies, and now we say guiding district policies. I happen to like the word establishing policies better, so perhaps you can explain why somebody thinks guiding the policies is a better choice. I'm done.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
So we changed the word, or we took the annual review of the mission and vision out, because it is a bit, it's a bit much to, now that you're going to adopt a 5-year strategic plan, it's a lot to review those things on an annual basis. The intent is for it to be a 5-year basis. There was a lot of review before because the organization has been in such transition. I think you can certainly still do that if you want to. I think probably what's better and where it seems that we're headed is more, once you establish the strategic plan, it's a review of the goals and the progress toward those goals that the board should really be reviewing on a regular basis, and not necessarily, you don't want to revisit your mission and vision every year. So that's why we've taken it out. Certainly the intent, and you'll see later that there's included that in staff, I think it's under GM, that we will provide updates on the progress toward our strategic plan, but to review the mission and vision every year is probably unnecessary and I think overly cumbersome. So that's why it's our proposal to remove it. And then in terms of changing guiding district policies, I think that there's a bit of misconception about there's a few policies that the board oversees, and there are a whole bunch of other policies that we have that are actually staff related and general manager that come from the general manager. So I think we were just trying to find a different word that, because sometimes there's a lot of confusion around which policy. So perhaps what would be better is if we put something that's put back direct, if that makes sense, direct district policies that are within the board view or something
Purview.
like that. Yeah, that might be.
Authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you could come up with a different wording for that. But I'm going to take exception. I'm going to push back a little bit on this annual review. You know, the reason why we have taken so much time in the past few years is because we were, as you said, in a state of transition. If it doesn't need any changes, then we can say, fine, it's great. But to not review every year, even if it's quick, is not a good practice for us to get into. For example, we have changed our goals every year, and it really reflects the changes that has happened within the district in that amount of time. And even if we look at our list of goals and we say we can take that one out because we've accomplished it or something, we can do that. But to go, there's a rhythm that we go through, and it's helpful if we keep that rhythm going. And I personally think it's important that we review every year, especially when our board can change either by death and during a pandemic. That's certainly possible. And every 2 years we have elections, so our board can change. So I think it's important that the board reviews every year. I feel really strongly about that.
Well, this doesn't say you can't do it. It just simply took it out as a requirement. And I think that if you want to review it, you can review it. I'm just saying that our proposal was to take it out because once we have a strategic plan, the intent is that should be good for 5 years, and we should be revisiting the goals and the progress toward those goals every year. But that's obviously up to the board's discretion to do that. I'm just explaining.
That's why this is kind of a problem with me about jamming everything into one document. This thing, responsibilities of the board, should go under the stuff that the board needs to know as far as being on the board of directors. The travel policy, the compensation policy, whatever. The responsibility of the board also is review certain things like the budget and whatever every year. So I don't know why we need to take it off, and I don't care if we have a 5-year plan. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at a document that we create, that we set policy on, and just review it. If there's nothing, like I said, to be done, then we don't do nothing. But to take it out from our responsibilities, I just don't agree with.
Director Stanley?
Let me just say this real quick, and then just 1 second, Justin. I think that recommendation can go to the full board, first of all, but I don't think that particular issue is what we're talking about right now. Whether or not we split this document or what this document covers, I would rather focus on the content of what's in it right now in this particular committee meeting, and whether or not there needs to be 2 documents, one that focuses on overall policy, or if this one only focuses on the board meetings. We can take that up some other time. But
okay, well, let me ask you this, Chairman Sudduth. Where do you see the nitpicky editing occurring? When does that occur? Do we bring this? Does this come back to another committee meeting to be discussed further, or do you send it? Is your thoughts that you send it up to the board and you let the board discuss this in a full board meeting and nitpick through it? I mean, how do you see that?
I don't mind nitpicky happening here. What I would like to see, though, is to look at it to see what has been taken out, because I'm not sure that what you're asking has to do with nitpicky rather than really more strategic. Is this document meant to cover everything, or is this document only meant? Your first comment was, this document should not cover everything. This document should only cover board meetings. That's different than should we nitpick what's in this document now. That's separate. That's totally different from looking at this document in depth to what it's meant to cover. Because if we're going to cover what's in here right now, then it should be in this committee and cover exactly what's in here, board policies and procedures, overall, everything. And yes, then we should look at it for what's in here right now. And I don't have a problem with that because I think it does need to be handled at the committee level. But if
Okay.
we're going to ask
So
them to split and do something totally different and go a different direction than what they have been told previously, then we need to make that decision and tell them that we want two different documents. What I don't want to do is have them spinning their wheels and giving us one document, and that's not that's not the direction that they were given in the first place. They were given direction to give us a board policies and procedures document, and that's what we've been given. So let's either focus on giving them direction on how we're going to edit these board policies and procedures documents and keep focused on that, or make a decision that we want to split this. But what I don't want to do is keep hammering and saying this is not what we want. That was my point.
Okay, so are you, as chair, are you saying that you're making the decision that we're going to keep one document called generically Board of Directors Policies and Procedures that sort of covers the kitchen sink of anything that has to do with the board? Is that what you're saying?
That was the direction they were giving. So for now, that's what I'm saying. Unless we make a decision otherwise as a board, that was the direction they were given, and that's the direction we're going in. For now. Unless we make a different decision, that's the direction I'm going in right now.
And we actually removed the name meeting from the title because it does seem to have, and responsibility of the board was in the existing policy, so that we never changed that. And but that is why we dropped the name meeting from this, because it did seem to cover much more than just the meetings. So that is the document that we're dealing with. If it's going to cover everything or all these things, we felt like the meeting piece of it didn't make sense.
Yes, and I honestly, as a board member, I would like to go to one comprehensive place to find out my information. I don't want to have to carry around a huge binder. I don't want to have to do that. We just had a meeting last week talking about how we can reduce our footprint, and this is it. I want to be able to carry it around on my phone and look it up, my information. I don't want to have to look at a big binder. I don't want to have to look in 4 places. If we can get it done here, let's get it done. But in the meantime, let's figure out what's different and what we need to do to make this easier on the staff to get us the information that we want. We can nitpick, but let's nitpick and stay on topic. So I think you made some very good points. I think you made some really good points right now, but we only got past page 1.
Okay.
So hold on. So Justin, you wanted to say something?
No, it's Cesar.
Oh, say sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I heard Justin's voice. I apologize.
I know. I was like, there's only 3 guys on here, so we're gonna.
Yes, I apologize. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask Director Stanley. I want to make sure that I'm looking at the right versions, but the previous version that we were working out of doesn't list the goals and visions as part of the responsibilities of the board, unless I'm missing it.
Yes, I know. That's what I'm complaining about.
Okay, so, but I thought I heard you say that we were removing it. So it's not that we were removing it, it's that we want to add them. So that's where I heard something.
It's not in the draft version 7. And so if everything that is our policy and procedures for the board, as Chairman Sutton just mentioned, then the review of our mission, vision, values, and goals should be under the responsibility of the board.
Okay, gotcha. My question was, because I thought I heard you say that we were removing it from the original version, but we're not removing anything from the original version because it wasn't there to begin with. So that was I just wanted to clarify that, because I was looking for it. I was like, do I have the wrong version? The wrong old version, or original version, I should say. So, but thank you for clarifying that.
No, I'm just making sure that one of the documents that we have, and I don't even know what it's called because everything's kind of mishmash, but if we are going to have one document for the board of directors to look at, then it should include that thing, whatever it's called.
Could I ask Mick to clarify that? Because I also was under the impression, and this is part of, I think, some of our problems, is that there are some things that are supposedly things that are supposed to be done that are not written anywhere, and it might just be practice. So, Mick, do you know if there's anywhere written where it says that the board is supposed to do an annual review? Because I was under that impression as well, but I don't see it in the existing policy.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but it may be there.
It's not in the meeting policies and procedures. So I was wondering if it was somewhere else.
Well, it's not in the meeting policy and procedure, and I'm wondering if it's somewhere else as well.
Yeah, okay.
It is somewhere, and it does say annual, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah. And it could be one of those things where, and this is what we're trying to address, is there's a practice that's happening and we're under the belief that it's written somewhere in something, but we don't know where it is. And so we're trying to kind of daylight some of those issues. And if it's something that needs to continue, make sure it gets into a document so it can consistently be followed, or get rid of that misunderstanding that it is something that's supposed to be done, but it's not actually documented anywhere.
And Mick, can Mick review and see if he's got it somewhere?
Yeah, that would be great to find out where it's located.
I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Ms. Chair, may I ask another question on this page?
Sure.
So I had a question in bullet point A, so Board of Directors 2.1A. The wording advising was exchanged for the wording governing. So the former document says, or the current, I should say, the current document says governing the district in accordance with blah, blah, blah. And now it says advising. Does that have any legal complications or anything by changing that particular word, advising versus governing? Is it kind of?
Yeah, it does have legal ramifications. Nick, you're the licensed attorney, so you should say this, but it does have ramifications.
Well, I'm curious as to why the change was made.
I'm not sure that we made it with any intent, so I can't speak to that. So I think we can probably go back to governing. Justin, do you know why we would have changed that word?
No, I'm not sure why that word would have been changed.
We'll change that back.
We can go back.
Thank you. Yeah, some of the words and pretty much all the bullet points there have the first word changed. And some of them are minute, but some of them, like governing, I think can have a different connotation. The other one was E. It used to be developing and adopting the district's master plan. Now it's informing and adopting. That one is a little bit closer to each other. But overall, I saw a few of them that were just a little bit different. So, but governing was a big one that I noticed.
So the one that was changed from developing to informing, the reason we changed that is because it's actually not the board that develops the master plan or the strategic plan in its entirety or other planning documents. but you do inform and you certainly approve and adopt. But it's really staff that develops that and presents that to the board.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
There was also a phrase that was omitted, overseeing implementation of the district's master plan, and that was omitted from E.
And that was also omitted because they really don't see the implementation, right? They oversee the approve it, but then, I mean, and that's even something that you recently said, Mick, is that the general manager is the implementation arm.
But doesn't the board oversee the general manager's implementation? That's how I read it.
Well, I think that we have that to providing direction to the general manager who implements district business. So we've addressed it in that bullet.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good with the rest of that there.
Okay, let's move on to the next page. Director Zepeda.
Okay, I'm just looking at my notes here. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to scroll 2 documents at once. Okay, under vice president, so I have nothing under president. I think president, everything was pretty much moved over. Under vice president, what I noticed, the difference between the 2 documents, something that is missing now, is that the vice president should sign all contracts, deeds, warrants, releases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That bullet point is missing from the new version, and I wasn't sure why that might have been removed.
We moved it to the president as a role of the president, which is more common. It was somewhat what we found uncommon to have it be done for the vice president. So we moved it to the president. It could be moved back to the vice president, but it was more common that it was under the president.
Okay, and I think before the vice president role, I think they used to be the what they call the secretary, right? It was the president and secretary. We had no VP. Yes. So under the secretary role, I guess that makes sense. But if we're fine moving it on the president, I see it now on the president. I'm fine. I just want to make sure that we were capturing that somewhere.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, it's up to the board's preference. Probably Mick is the only one who knows the history as to why it was vice president versus president.
I think it's because that's what the ordinance code said. So it was in your district ordinance code that it was the secretary who signed.
Okay, so we'll confirm that then.
Thank you. My other question, I moved on, actually, I think it's at the bottom of that page still. Under directors, and I don't know if this got moved somewhere else, but.
Are you moved on to another page?
Oops, sorry.
We're only doing one page at a time, right?
Yeah, let me get Director Stanley's
sorry.
really quick. So Director Stanley, you had something on this page?
Yeah, it's the last thing. It's pretty much what Director Zepeda is saying. And part of the reason, my understanding why, one, yes, the vice president was the secretary up until just very recently, but also because, it takes a certain amount, I understand the office is closed right now, but usually there's a lot of signing going on every week almost that the vice president does. And so with the president meeting with the board, with the general manager every week, which was what was usually done, sort of split up the work between the two of them. Because otherwise the vice president really doesn't have anything to do.
So before me, the president did not meet with the general manager every week. And while I've been general manager, there wasn't a weekly meeting with the president. So I'm not sure if that was historically the reason for it or why it would be in the ordinance.
Yeah, and actually I checked the ordinance, it's not, and what the change you made is consistent with statute. But I think Director Stanley is correct as to why the vice president or secretary was signing contracts. I'm trying to remember because it's been so long, but I think it was just not a separation, but just having somebody else to sign from the board. Again, not in any policy.
Yeah, the other issue is that really it's not a lot. I mean, a lot of things are delegated to staff at this point or through the general manager is authorized to sign. So I don't know if, over time we've just done a whole lot less. But again, it's up to the board. It sounds like it's not a requirement. It was a preference to provide a role for the vice president. But again, that's our recommendation based on this, what was more common.
Do we maybe want to say, give that to the vice president as well, but say in case the president is unable to be available or something? Let's say the president travels out and the only person in the district is the VP, then the VP can go sign it in case it's something urgent. And I'm hoping that everything goes to like DocuSign soon, so we have no paper to sign, is my hope.
The legal answer to that is the statute says contracts, et cetera, are supposed to be signed by the president and countersigned by the statutory word is secretary, but it means vice president in this context. Except by resolution, somebody else could be designated. I suspect you have a resolution out there somewhere that does that.
Okay.
You'll have to take a look at that and probably modify it.
Well, we do that usually within the resolution of the item if it's being authorized by the board. For example, say authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement. So through that resolution, it's not signed.
Yeah, I get that, but I think there's an overall resolution that delegates that role to the secretary. I'm guessing that. I have kind of a vague recollection of it. I'll see if I can dig it out.
So it's really a board preference.
Correct. That's correct.
Well, it gives something for the vice president to do.
So let's
We'll
let's
note it.
put that in your recommendation, that in our recommendation as a committee to the full board. So Lisa, that'll go with the recommendation because we need it as a recommendation. And so we can vote on that one. I want to hold the vote until the end, but say the recommendation that you just gave.
Uh-huh.
Because of what Mick just said, I think that's how it probably should read. You said how it should read.
Well, you don't need to vote on it. We can simply note it as something that you guys discussed and felt like the board should consider adding it to the vice president.
I'm actually talking myself back into what I should have said the first time. Mick just said how it's supposed to read, so I think that's the way it should read. He said that the statute says that it's supposed to be signed by the president and countersigned by the vice president.
That's correct. And then by resolution, you can delegate the responsibility to somebody else.
Yeah, so I think it should read like that.
I think it does say that in what we put in the president. It actually addresses it. It says sign all contracts, blah, blah, blah.
It does.
But I don't think it says it for the vice president. I think that was Cesar's point. So I think that's where it should say something about countersigning under vice president.
It does say unless such authority is duly delegated to the general manager or other district officer or employee. If you look at 2.2.1, it actually reads the way that Mick was saying is consistent. So it does that.
Not quite, because it doesn't say it has to be countersigned by the vice president. That's what the statute.
Right.
Oh, the counter.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the counter signature.
Okay, gotcha.
So if,
Well,
if you add that, I think you're okay.
Okay, got it.
Well, pardon me, directors,
Yes, go ahead.
Chairman Suss,
Chairwoman.
Yes, go ahead.
Chairwoman,
Yes, go ahead.
are you saying
Go ahead.
okay to me?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Oh, well, the vice president usually also signs minutes for approval. You know, the board says, yes, we're going to pass these minutes. Well, then the vice president signs the actual resolution. So there are a couple things that the vice president signs. Just because
Yeah.
he or she used to be the secretary.
Some of those things have changed. Like, for example, the secretary used to read all the meeting agenda and all of those items. And then at some point it was just decided that the board clerk should do that. So there's a lot of stuff that changed with that role when the name changed.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay. So can we go to the next page?
Yep, ready.
All right, next page.
All right, for me, under directors, what was missing is, and I don't know if we need to add this back or not, but what was missing was directors may join, attend, or participate in the meeting while not physically present if approved by the president. Proper notice must be issued to be able to comply with the Brown Act.
So we did not include that because there is a provision for that in the Brown Act already. And Mick, you can speak to that. I think you talked to that about there's the noticing that's required. And at this point, the thinking is that a lot of things are potentially going to change right now and are in flux because of remote meetings and COVID. So we didn't want to add that at this point because of that, because things may change. And I think you already have sufficient coverage for that in the Brown Act of how that could happen.
While I agree with that, my only question would be, as a new director, how would that individual know to let the president, or to ask the president to be asked to be allowed to join remotely? Is that just, would that just be a given?
No, I think you're trying to, I understand what you're trying to address. So let me think about a way we can include that, because you're just saying, if you were reading this as a new director, how would you even know that was an option?
Yeah, and then how to communicate it, both being an option, but also, because to me, I might go to you, and you might then tell me, be like, oh, go to the president. All right, so now I got one other step to do, as opposed to reading this and going, oh, I don't have to go to the GM, I go to the president, and then the president approves me to do so or not.
Okay.
And I don't know if they still have to approve it. I don't know if it's just like a notice. It says approved by the president, and I don't know if the president actually needs to approve it. And that might be a legal question. I don't know if that wording needs to be in there, approved, or is it just notification?
And I may have misunderstood. What is the president's approving?
So the old verbiage says directors may join, attend, and/or participate in a meeting while not physically present, comma, if approved by the president. So I don't know if it needs to be approved by the president or if it just needs to notify the president.
I'm trying to find that in the existing policy, Caesar. I don't see.
It's not in the existing policy. It was a recommendation from the ad hoc. So
was that one of our recommendations?
You're then looking at the February 2nd draft, February 5th draft?
Yeah, so it's on page 4. And it's under the second paragraph in orange. It says directors may join, well, it's the last sentence right above board attorney that got added. I thought it was a recommendation from the ad hoc. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure that we added it though.
It's really an interesting question because if they're going to join, you could do teleconferencing anytime, but there are certain agenda requirements that are required outside of this COVID period. So the agenda has to provide for the teleconference location. It's got the agenda has to be posted at all teleconference locations. It's not something that can be done like last minute. It's got to be done prior to the agenda being posted.
Yeah.
So although it can be done, there has to be a process to follow in order to do it properly.
Yeah, so I know that the process is there because a few of us have taken advantage of that and
Yeah.
used it, right? It's use that process. My question is more into the wording approved by the president versus just notify the president. And Lisa, I don't
That's a
remember.
policy question, not illegal. That's at the pleasure of the board.
Okay, so if we do add something there, we don't have to add the word approved then.
You do not have to have the word approved, not legally.
Okay, perfect.
So we could add back, if you want, the directors may join, take out the part that says if approved by the president, and then include that second part of that sentence, which is the part that Mick is referring to, proper notice must be issued to be able to comply with the Brown Act.
Yeah, something like that. I'm just thinking of like new board members. Now I've read this policy several times. I can tell you what's there.
Right.
But that was new. I don't know what anything was. And also, this just allows, it's a place to where if in the future somebody forgets we can do this, a director can say, hey, I actually can participate from, LA because I'm working there, and the policy allows me to.
Yeah, but your staff, that is that's a conundrum for your staff, because they have a lot of work to do when a teleconference meeting is being properly noticed. So you can't give a new director, or any director for that matter, the impression they can just decide last minute to teleconference, because they can't.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Nick, it will require that if they were doing that in order to vote, right, 3 board members have to be within district boundaries. Is that what you said?
Correct.
A quorum of the board has to be within district boundaries.
Okay.
Not now. Right now, Lisa, all those rules are suspended.
But when we resume, unless they change it, what it currently states, right? Is
Correct. No, it's going to go back to what the statute says. It's just a question of when.
Well, that should be written clearly so it's easy to understand. As Director Sutta says, if you're a new director, you want to understand exactly what the rule is.
Yeah.
I think our intent is to try to put in what we can, but also there's a lot of things that are somewhat like detailed that we're trying not to, we're trying to strike the balance of providing the things you need to know, but also not getting into every possible scenario, because this could then be a super extensive and no longer useful reference or document. So that's the challenge of putting enough, but not putting too much. So we can definitely add that back, and then sort of the details, if we think that, if the board thinks that that's important enough to include, the details of that have to be, you have to dig into it a little bit, if you will.
Well, you can make it simple too, though, by just adding a proviso that providing that the notice or that the
Right.
request for teleconference appearance is made prior to the posting of the agenda.
Yep.
And I think once I don't know, again, just thinking as a brand new board member, and I'm hoping that the president knows that what the process is. So if, as a brand new board member, if I notify the president, that individual will then tell me, okay, you're too late to comply with the Brown Act because you're telling me in the meetings tomorrow, so we can't do it. Or, good, you're a week ahead, so we can do it.
Well, generally what is said is that you can participate in the meeting, you just can't vote. You can't, you basically are an audience member.
Yeah.
You can't count towards the quorum, you can't vote, you basically are you're a guest. You can't speak on anything, you can't even talk, you're a guest.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. So that's, and I'm agreeing with what Lisa is saying. Now, I don't think we need to go into too much detail, just something to where at least it triggers someone to ask that question and to say, okay,
what I'm saying, Cesar, is that I don't think that needs to be spelled out in this document. I agree with Mick. It needs to just be kept simple, and it needs to say, as long as you notify before the agenda is posted, and then the rest of it is a training issue for the board. That's not something that needs to be written down in this document. It's a training issue for the directors and the officers of the board. We do that separate. I don't think it has to be spelled out here.
Yeah, definitely agree with not fully being spelled out, just high level. So I think we're in the same place there. So good.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
so the next thing here that I noticed that is missing was staff communication. In the previous version or the current version, it had a H. It said staff communication, and that whole section was gone. And I don't think I saw it anywhere else in the policy. And I don't know if we want it on there or not, Lisa. But
No, it should be
paragraph
there.
reads to it is the general manager's responsibility to manage communications and requests between the board and staff. Make individual requests for information or ask for a task to be completed by staff. The request should be made to the GM.
Where's this?
It's missing from version 7. That's what I'm saying. And I don't know if we want to add it back in there, Lisa, because I think
Yeah.
that's a good info for the directors to not contact the staff directly to do tasks.
Yes, it should be there.
Okay, perfect.
We may change the $1,000 information, but we'll have something about staff communications.
Perfect, thank you. I think that might be important there. Ms. Chair, I am ready. Unless there's any other questions, I'm ready for another page.
Okay, so Ms. Stanley, Director Stanley?
Yes, I'm questioning why we don't have the paragraph that talks about when the board elections do occur, which is the first Friday in the month of December. Why it's not here if we're talking about election of our president and our vice president. So I think it's appropriate that that paragraph gets put back here. And we didn't did we approve this vice president follows the president thing, or was that just put to the side and we'll deal with it later? Let's just get what we need to figure out for this election back in January, because I don't recall agreeing to that, and I really hate the word ascension.
I believe, what page are you on? Because that's a different page, isn't it?
I'm looking at 2.2.11.
Oh, so you went back
right?
up. So
Yeah, it's still on page 3. It's just at the top.
So we're using the word ascension. I don't really like that word. And I also don't think we approved that exactly, because it was so confusing, and we wanted to get the election that was already a month late taken care of, and that we would come back and visit this. And if we are saying that we did approve that, then I have something to say about that. And I also agree with Director Cepeda about it should be notified, not approved by the board president. That's always been a bone of contention. Some presidents think they got more power than they don't, and they're just a director. So it shouldn't be the board president approves anything. If things are done properly noticed, then you should be able to attend a meeting remotely if that's what you have to do. So that's my thing on this page.
Okay, so before we move to page 4, I don't think any of this stuff in here from the ad hoc committee was necessarily approved. I think that what we're looking at are their recommendations. So
There was a discussion, though. And Lisa, you probably remember this because President Weiner was president at the time. And we told him, when you change the policy for the one night to appoint the president and vice president, you really change the policy, and you need to revisit it later. So it wasn't, it was really only a one-time thing, but we both advised them, as I remember, you're going to have to go back and revisit this and make your decision.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So we did have that discussion then.
Okay, well, that's what I remember too, and I
And
also
that's-
think that we need to include that paragraph that talks about the elections are the first Friday in December.
Yes, I'm not going to disagree with you. I was going to say that. So we will make that. I'm going to agree with that recommendation. The word ascension is what it is. I just want to say this, so this will make this next 8 pages go better. I understand you don't like the word. I would rather you tell me what word you like rather than what you don't like. That will make the rest of this go much better. If you have a different word that you like, can you let them know that one? It's easier.
Well, I think
Don't
that the board president should be elected by the board.
Okay,
The
then say
vice
that.
president should be elected by the board. There's no automatic moving up in line. You know, the board was elected by the voters. So the board are intelligent human beings, and they can decide who they want to have to be president or vice president. There's not an automatic, you're going to move to the next position.
So in other words, you don't like that paragraph at all. So it's not the word ascension that you don't like. You don't like 2.2.11.
Correct.
Okay, so then that's different than the word ascension.
Well, I don't like the word ascension, but that's
You don't like
what mostly.
2.2.11. So what I would
That's-
suggest is having a different paragraph. Then you should recommend a different paragraph rather than 2.2.11, rather than think about the word ascension, then have something different. But what I'm going to say at this point is we add the phraseology about when our elections are held, and then we can have the discussion about whether we have 2.211 or we have, as we did in 2020, January 2020, the elections as we discussed this year. And the entire board will have that discussion.
Ms. Chair,
Okay.
Yes.
and Director Stanley, thank you for, I missed that section for some reason. I scrolled too fast on one document and I missed my notes on that one. But in the document that we submitted from our committee, because we were asked to look at the whole policy and procedures, but also especially at that section to make a recommendation. And then the other recommendation came up much faster than ours, even though we weren't, the other committee was not tasked with doing that. So our recommendation is listed. So I would like for that to be moved forward as our recommendation from the committee,
That's fine.
because that was one of our tasks.
Yes.
And it does have on there at the first regular meeting of the board of directors after the first Friday, blah, blah, blah. It does have the ascension to the presidency, but that is their recommendation from the other committee as well. So I would like for that to be put up and then be voted at the full board. And then it also asks, it also talks about the recommendations to take into consideration for having an officer, for being an officer of the board. So that should also be put in front of the board to discuss, because that section there, directors, Wiener and myself spend a lot of time, and I don't see that captured anywhere else in the document. And it's not gone up on me under the president there. But I think we need to have a section about the officers and, you know, how that process works. So I would like to see that be put back in there as under section C, officers, in the version that Director Wiener and myself provided.
Okay. So, two things. So we will add back when the elections are held. We will take forth, and I think we'll take forth your recommendations from the ad hoc committee. And Director Stanley, I will say that the proper time to bring forth the objection to 2.2.11 is at that meeting. As your, and I think it's, you know, we have that discussion there, just like we did earlier this year. The officers, the information you said, section C?
Uh-huh.
See
on
it, what that is?
from the original.
Yeah, so you want to put that back in so we can have that discussion because I don't see it, so I don't know.
I noted that.
Okay.
Well, a little bit of a rebuttal there. If, you know, if the assumption is that the vice president is going to move up to president, and that's always a given, that really takes away the board's ability to say, wait a minute, we're not really pleased with our current vice president for whatever reason,
Yes.
or we prefer to have a different vice president for whatever reason.
Yes.
I don't really like the idea that we're taking away that ability, and by you know, we list under vice president, you know, these are the things we should think about,
Yes.
but we don't list that under president.
Sure.
So,
Director, I think that sort of addressed in what we presented, because it does say it is subject to the approval of the majority of the board of directors. It also has a section, I believe in there, if I remember correctly, in there where we can remove someone. I don't remember if it's this section or somewhere else, but yeah, the president and vice president may be removed from office at any time by the affirmative vote of 3 members of the board of directors if the board consists of 4 or 5 members, and then it goes into it. So it kind of touches on that already. That's why I think it's going to be, it's important to put that back in there.
yeah, but you've made the assertion that the vice president is going to be the president. So you're taking away the ability of the board to have any flexibility, and I don't agree with
No,
that.
because it says by the approval of the majority of the board of directors. So if the board of directors then says,
Where does it say that?
it doesn't. That's why I'm saying it got removed from version 7, but that is their recommendation from the ad hoc committee. But it wasn't captured.
Yeah,
in
and
version.
And I think
But there was-
that's why I said then we have not seen it. That's why I said let us see the full thing so we can make a decision better.
Yeah. So if Lisa, if you wouldn't mind adding it back up again, I think we can then discuss it at the full board meeting and then
Yeah.
hash it out there. Please, thank you.
Because we had this discussion, Director Zepeda, we had this discussion at the planning committee earlier this year. So I know what Director Stanley is talking about because we had this exact discussion earlier this year. So let's see what it says. I'm not opposed to it. I just want to see the whole. I want to see the full picture.
Okay.
Okay. So can we move to page 4?
Yeah. I can. Yeah, I'm ready.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you. Page 4. Director Zepeda.
All right. Let me just. So there's something that I didn't see here that was on the other version, was the types of meetings. It said meetings of the board of directors, and then it listed every type of meeting. It had the regular board meetings, special meetings.
Yeah.
Uh,
We didn't feel like it was necessary, but that's our recommendation. So, I mean, there are different requirements for those meetings in terms of postings, but essentially they're all board meetings and essentially will follow for the most part the same process for creating agendas other than timing, conduct, all of those things.
okay.
Closed session is sort of, I mean, it follows the same process, but obviously it has some different rules. That's our recommendation. It could certainly be added back if that's what the preference is.
Nope, I just didn't see it, so I wasn't sure if we needed it. But reading through the items again, I think I agree. I don't think we need to add it back in there. So I think I'm fine with that one there.
Again, it's that idea of trying to make this streamlined, adding what we need to, not excluding what's critical, but not putting too much more detail than is necessary. That makes it then a difficult document to find things.
Yeah, and for section in version 7, 4.2.2 E, I think that process there doesn't quite follow either Robert's rules or Rosenthal's rules yet. So figuring out how to add because we're listing the rules here, so I don't know if that was the intent. Because it's public.
I went through this and
because it says public comments are heard in D, right? And then it says board discusses the item. And after public comments are heard, then we need a motion to bring the item to the floor. Because it says the process is just a little bit off. So maybe just look at the process again and updating it.
Yeah, you are a small, what do you call a small assembly, and so you don't need a formal motion in order to discuss anything. And I think that's why it's in the order it's in. If you have, what is it, 12, if you have 12 or fewer members, you're under different rules of Robert's rules.
Well, no, but if we adopt this document, and later in the document, it'll say we're going to adopt Rosenthal's rules, and if we're going to adopt the rules as they're written, then we need to also update the process so they follow the rules that we're about to adopt.
Well, I agree with that, but even under Robert's rules, if you stick with Robert's rules, you are a small assembly, and so you do not need to have a motion to discuss an item. Rosenberg may be different.
so,
Yeah, so
we didn't include the Rosenberg's rules. That was a recommendation that staff wasn't presenting. But I mean, what we can do is when this goes before the board, we can revise this section that says this is what you need to do if you go with Rosenberg. This is what you need to do if you go to Roberts. I think that'll address it.
yeah, because somewhere in here they said, because that was one of the recommendations that we were
Yes.
making.
Yeah.
It does fit in there. I'm just saying if we're going to go with Rosenthal's, because that will be the final recommendation, I believe.
Yeah.
If we do, then this section here doesn't match the Rosenthal's
Right.
step.
So we would just need to reverse E and F then.
It will be getting rid of E,
Okay.
because we already have, so the staff presents, the board asks clarifying questions or technical issues. We're not discussing the item, and then we go into public comment, and then that's, according to Rosenthal, then somebody needs to make a motion.
Hmm?
And I understand the small gatherings, but if we're going to adopt Rosenthal's, then we need to either figure out the small gathering rules of Rosenthal's or go in with the whatever it's written as what we found. And one of the documents that we were given to look at came from the League of Cities for Rosenberg's rules. And that's what Harry and I used to put this together.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So
that's
we'll present those two things.
Thank you so much. I just don't want to have two different things because the board is already confused sometimes. So
Do option
you.
A and option B with the right process.
Perfect. Thank you. Ms. Chair, that is it for me for right now.
All right, thank you. Director Stanley?
So I'm confirming that we are going to put the quorum information in as from the old document rather than this new document. Is that correct?
You mean at the beginning of the document? You're going, not on this page.
Well, yeah, it is. It's 4.2.1 quorum.
Yeah. Yeah, at the beginning of the other document, we talked about quorum, and Lisa said she was going to add that back into it.
Yes. I'm sorry. I thought, yes, we will. I think it was, no, okay, that's fine. I gotcha. Yes.
And then under 4.1, there's no mention of how directors get items on an agenda, and why the president's approval is not included. If that probably should be mentioned, or it gets put under the category, don't forget to put this on their training materials.
It's here, actually, 4.2.3 about agenda items.
Well, I'm only on 4.1. 4.3 is a different page.
It's a different
So-
page, and I think we have it a few times because 5.2 talks specifically about agendas.
Okay.
And I know that's a few pages later, so we might want to click. So Director Stanley, I think what we might want to do is maybe clean that up so we don't have it in multiple pages.
Yes. And then I do like the idea of listing the type of meetings as long as it does become a training item and that we don't lose that information, because, you know, some of the things that we're doing is unique to us and what we like, or we're creating these documents, but they still need to be explained so that a new director, for example, understands why we're doing things a certain way, or why we're not putting it in this document, but we're going to train you and you're going to get the information. So I just want to make sure that they do understand that we like to talk, and we like the flexibility of being able to show up for any meeting, and that's why we notice the meetings that we do the way we do. But a new director should be aware that of why we do that stuff, and it should just be a training thing. I'm done.
Thank you. If change from one meeting method to another, you know, from Robert's rules, I think the first thing to do is to make sure that we are not just making the recommendation to the board and adopting it, also noticing the public. Most of the public is used to one set of rulemaking. Most people have heard of Robert's Rule, and I would like to see it published so that people know the difference, even if they're not coming or they only come very, you know, ever so often. Just making sure that that's published on the website somewhere so people know. It's good for them to know. I go to a lot of meetings, so it's different for people who've been to a lot of meetings and people who know, and for people who don't know. Cuts down on a lot of frustration. So that's just my tidbit, whether it's for the public or for even staff who decide to come to sit in on meetings, knowing when they are allowed to either give public comment or when discussions will be held, or how motions are made, etc. It's just good for people to know. Okay, next page. Page 5. Comments?
Under
Director
page
Cepeda?
5, I'm looking to see if I have any notes. I don't see any notes yet. I'm just trying to put the two pages, the two documents together. Give me 1 second. I didn't see anything that mentioned public hearings, and I don't know if we need that in here. We might not, but I just noticed that public hearings was missing. The board of directors may conduct public hearings from time to time. Public hearings shall adhere to the following procedures.
4.4.
4.4, is that, have I not done? Okay, you know what? Yep, the two documents are not matching, so sorry. Yeah, so that's there. So I have no comments on page 5.
Director Stanley?
Page 5, I don't like Rosenberg's. I've spent the last 3 years learning Roberts as best I can and bought in the books and the cheat sheets, so I don't really feel like changing. But that's up to the board to decide.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move to page 6, please. Yeah, can you hear me some water, please?
Is that somebody's music?
It's called the prayer, so,
Oh.
yeah, can you guys go ahead with page 6? Can you hear me then?
All right. So for page 6, 4.3.3, it says the vice president or his or her their designee shall attend all board meetings. I don't see that as a current policy, and I'm not sure why that would be a policy where we're mandating the vice president to attend. I'm not sure where that came from.
All of us are mandated to attend, not just the vice president or the president. All of us are mandated to attend all regular board meetings.
Yeah, so that's 4.3.4, but I'm not sure why we're calling out, actually that's employees. I'm not sure why we're calling out the vice president by itself.
Yeah, I don't think
No,
we have it under 2.1B anyway, which says attend duly scheduled meetings of the board. So I don't know. Justin, any idea? Do you know?
No, I don't know. It feels like this could be a duplicate item if we're already in the previous section talking about board member attendance.
Yeah.
Perfect. Then I am good with that. Let me just match here really quickly. Okay, one thing that's missing, but that I don't think we need anyways, is each person that wants to speak on the speaker public participation and says that they need a speaker card. I don't think that's a policy. That is a policy of ours. That's just something they have to do. So I can see why it's not on there. So I'm fine with that.
Which number are you talking about?
Just in general, 4.4.
Oh.
And then under decorum, something that we added in our rendition, and Harry's and I, under decorum, we added on there, director's attire should be professional and reflect a director's position as a leader in the community. And I don't see that presented.
We removed that. We decided that it was better to address it in a more general way. It does, when you start to put things like that in a policy, even the thinking is moving away from dress codes in the workplace. It gets very, even the word professional or everyone has very different ideas of that, and so what we chose to do instead was the director should consider optics of meetings, and to do it in a more general way. It's problematic. We feel it's problematic to put that language in, as it could potentially create rifts between board members, and it implies a certain level of assumptions around everybody has different feelings about that and different abilities around that. So that was our recommendation. We didn't include it, but
there are also certain First Amendment rights people have to, I don't know that you can impose a dress code. You can certainly make suggestions, but you're treading on thin ice there.
exactly.
It was a little judgmental.
Yeah.
It was a little judgmental.
The reason we put it up there was just to make sure that we are always one, the district allows us to order a shirt every quarter or a outfit, or piece of an outfit every quarter. So we figured if the district's going to be buying this clothes for us, that's more or less our uniform. And if anything, we should be using that uniform.
Well, it's not a uniform, so you have to be careful with that as well, because a uniform, we are required to provide you with a uniform if we have a uniform, and we don't have uniforms. The logo wear is optional. So you're not required to wear it, you're not required to order it.
But the way that you said it, I think it's fine. The way that Lisa just said, can you say it again?
Oh gosh, which part?
No, the way you reworded,
I think Mick said it in a nice, succinct way.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it was.
all I said was that people have a First Amendment right to to dress the way they please, and if you're on thin ice when you start telling people how they must dress at a meeting.
Yeah. Oh, if you're talking about the language, we just
Yeah,
wrote.
the language.
Oh, okay. It was in 4.6. Directors should consider the optics of meetings.
Yeah, I think that was what I was. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Should have recorded meetings while a meeting is in progress and being recorded.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was saying too. I think that from having to do this almost every day with EEO, I think that's probably as far as we can go.
Yeah, even
Okay.
with our review of personnel policies, we're being advised to remove dress code policy. We had a really
Yes.
yeah. So it definitely would be problematic here, I think. Not even employees of each other, so.
All right, then I'm fine with that. And I think for now, I'm good on that page, Ms. Chair.
Thank you.
Madam.
Director Stanley?
I'm also good, but I'm also going to make a note that because of some of my disabilities, I might wear tennis shoes where normally I might have worn some other shoes, and it's strictly medical. And who are we to get involved in people's business? So I'm just throwing that out there.
I get to wear matching shoes for the first time since 2016, so I'm very happy. So, yes.
Well, mismatched accessories are actually very fashionable. So you were fashionable before. If you were wearing
Yeah, I was fashionable for 4 whole years, so.
But now we can't see your feet over WebEx unless you're going to be broadcasting them.
Yes, I didn't put my feet on the desk though, so I did watch the optics. Okay, can we go to page 7, please? All right, page 7, standing committees. Director.
All right, so in the other document, right before committees, there was a section that talked about adjournment. And I didn't see that on here on the new document, version 7. And what it basically said, I don't know that this was a recommendation from Harry and I think this was just part of the old document.
Oh.
Regular board meetings should end and be adjourned by no later than 10 p.m. on the day for which they are noticed. Meetings may extend beyond 10 upon the affirmative vote over a majority of the directors present and voting, providing, however, that in no case shall any meeting extend beyond 11.
We'll add that back. That was an oversight.
Thank you. I don't think you guys want to be there forever. And some directors like talking a lot. No opinions of any of them. Let me see. In 5.3, this is talking about standing committees. The second paragraph, where a quorum of directors attend a standing committee meeting and participate in said meeting, the meeting is considered a board of directors meeting and must be noticed as such.
Wait a minute, are you on 5.3?
Yeah, page 5.
Oh, 5.
No, page 7.
I'm sorry, page 7. Sorry, at the top it said I saw 5 on the committee. Sorry, it's page 7.
So
section
5.3 is ad hoc.
No, 5.1.3.
Ah, okay.
Sorry, 5.1.3, standing committees, the second paragraph. I just wasn't sure if we should be adding anything else in there to say what happens if we have more than 2 board members in a standing subcommittee.
Well, we did write that when a quorum of the directors attend, it's considered a board of directors meeting and should be noticed as such.
Okay, perfect.
And that if directors are going to do that, to notify us so we can do so.
Perfect.
That
Thank
should
you.
really be when a quorum of the board attends. Because the quorum of the committee is
Yes.
2, the quorum of the
Yes.
board is 3. Yeah.
All right, that works. And then the next section under agendas, I think there's a typo. The general manager and appropriate staff in cooperation with the general manager.
Yeah.
So I think we need, there should be in cooperation with the president.
Yes.
So that should say president. And
Where was that?
5.2.
Director Cepeda, I think to clarify, this is when we're discussing committees, this probably should say the chair,
Yes.
cooperation with the chair.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did not see something that talked about the responsibilities of the chair. In the other document, it said directors appointed as chair of a committee have no additional powers beyond those of individual director. However, while serving as chair, a director has the following roles and responsibilities, and it kind of lists out what they are. I don't know if we need to add that on there or we're fine without it.
It's up to you. Up to the board.
Okay.
We can present it. We can add it back and present it if you want.
Yeah, maybe as a side note, so that way everybody can see it if they want to keep it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need it. We might, just for people that don't know what a chair does of a committee. And that is, oh, and actually, when I said 5.2 earlier, we were talking about the agendas. And there was another section that talked about agendas. I just realized that this agendas was for committees. The other agenda was for the board agendas. So that other board agendas should also match similar to this. The GM works with the staff in cooperation with the president. So up above where we said we might be removing the other agenda section, I think that one just wasn't written all the way. And it should probably match very similar to 5.2. I believe it was like 4.2 or something. Madam Chair, I believe I'm done with questions on this page.
Thank you. Director Stanley?
Are we still on page 7?
Yes.
I'm done. I don't have anything.
Okay. Page 8, please.
All right. In page 8, just a quick question, and I believe again it might be a typo. Director compensation 7.2 pursuant to WCCD. I wasn't sure what WCCD was.
But that should be WCWD. That was a typo.
Okay, perfect. I Googled it. I was like, maybe that's a code I don't know about. Like IRS code or something. Perfect. So that's just a typo, and same with 7.3.
Yeah, same. It was an error.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I was like, maybe it's a code I don't know about. I should be looking into it. That is it for me, I believe, on that page.
Director Stanley?
Well, I guess my question would be, perhaps this is a training point. Any elected official can speak individually as that elected official. They just can't speak as representing a majority view of the board. So is that something that we just want to make sure gets discussed during training and doesn't need to be addressed here, or do we want to address it under 8.1.1?
I don't think we'd do it under compensation. It would only be under I don't think it would make, is that what you're suggesting, to do it under compensation?
No,
Oh,
I'm saying 8.1.1, where it says a director acting as an individual, not as an official district representative. It's under definitions. So I wanted to know, do we need to clarify for a new director, for example, that as an elected official, they can talk to anybody they want to, as a board member, as long as they're not representing themselves as speaking for the board or the district? Does that make sense? I think I just undid that. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just under definitions.
I think it's a question to the other board members.
Acting as an individual, not as an official district representative.
Yes, but as an elected official, you can say, I am a board member of West County Wastewater District. This is my thoughts.
Okay. So what do you want? I'm trying to understand what you want. What do you do? Are you trying to change something, or are you just saying?
I'm just wondering if this is something that goes under, that should be noted under training, to train new directors, that they can, as an elected official, they can talk anywhere they want to and state that they're a board member. They just got to be careful to state that they're speaking individually as a board member, not representing the majority view of the board.
Yeah, I guess it's a training thing. I don't think that has to be that's not a definition. I think it's just a training.
I think the intent is when there actually is a new policy, that some of these things would be better incorporated. Well, one, will have a rollout and go through all of this, but also there would be a better orientation, certainly, that would go through these things and would talk in probably more detail about a lot of these things.
I'm just making note of this because we don't necessarily have a good training program put in place yet.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Question, though? Did that answer your question, though?
Pardon?
Did that answer your question, though?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Next page.
Director or Madam Chair, I believe the next pages that follow are just more of the definitions.
Okay, so if you have no more questions, we can skip through them. But did you guys have any questions on these? I do not.
I didn't on those necessarily. I just had a question on something that was on a similar-ish page, and I don't know where it fits, but it was removed.
So let me check with Director Stanley first. Director Stanley, do you have any questions on any more of the definitions?
No, we're done with page 8, correct?
8. We're going to 9. Do you have any questions on page 9, which also has definitions? And we're getting
No.
to That line's actually on page 9.
No, I
Board
have nothing for
communication.
9.
And then page 10 is Director Training and Education. So Director Zepeda, do you have anything on this one with district budget, Director Training and Education?
And maybe it falls on the district budget. When the form in the previous rendition, it talked about, and I don't know where this goes or if we need to add it back in there, but it talks about the board budget and expenditure authority. And I'm not sure if that is anywhere else in this document or if we need it back in there. It says each year as part of the budget process, the board will establish a board of directors division budget as well as a budget for each individual director. Each director has the authority to expend his or her budget within the established limit and in compliance with relevant district policies, travel, per diem, etc. The division budget or individual director budgets may be increased only by the approval of a majority of the board.
So
And I don't
this
know-
hasn't been followed for any of the times in the 4 years I've been here. This wasn't being followed. So we removed it, thinking that the board probably didn't want to have that. I mean, certainly that we have to work within the budget, but essentially the board has been the only real things that you have are your training. So I don't know, that's a question for Mick, if that's a requirement or if that was just a board practice that predates me, because it wasn't, as I said, being followed even when I got here as business manager. So
That was a board practice, and it was just it was in this policy just to memorialize the practice. So it's not legally required.
So at this point, we've gone with sort of the practice that has been in place, which is you guys do follow other policies within. I mean, you can only obviously spend through the allowable expenditures, which are designated through all the other policies, fiscal policies. So we excluded it.
Yeah, in other words, this is already covered in other policies and
Yeah.
redundant here.
Perfect, that works for me.
Okay.
No other questions on that page.
Director Stanley?
Talking about page 10, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I have nothing.
Okay, so with respect to that one, again, I would say please just explain why it was taken out, the
Yeah.
rationale behind it, so that there is a clear understanding of why it's no longer there. It was the practice before, and why it's no longer necessary to have it.
Sure. And I did want to, I know you guys don't have any questions, but actually the section around district budget, we did change and beef that section up because there was much more about procedures than there was really about sort of the scope of responsibility around the budget itself and the board's role. So that is something that we added and increased some of that. So it's still at a high level that's appropriate for the board, but this is when you talk about what does the board do with the budget and what's their role, we wanted to put a little bit more in there. So you'll see we added the budget term, that there's a 2-year budget, that you establish the overall spending authority, there's a GAN limit that's required, the general manager authority to transfer funds is consistent with what was there before. It's worded a little different, but it's the same. And so anyway, when you get a chance, or if you've read that already, you'll see that that section is more focused on, there are things that have been added, and it's more focused on the things that the board needs to be aware of and what the board's role is in budget. So anyway.
I think that section looks good. Lisa, thank you for that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Next page, please.
All right. I don't have questions in regards to this specifics on here. What I did notice in the previous document, it had a section at the very end that said amendment, conflict with the law. And we talked about amending this policy and then any conflicts with the law. I don't see that on here. That sort of talks about how we can amend this policy. So I don't know if we need to add it back in there for
We should
future
probably add
direction.
that back. Yep.
Perfect.
I'm
Other
sorry,
than that,
I didn't understand what you said. Did you say you're going to add it back?
Yes, that wasn't an intentional exclusion. Although I think it may have been conflict with law, I think was probably embedded in some other places, but it doesn't hurt to include that section. And I don't think we had anything in there about the amendment. It might be in another section, but we'll add that section back.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, or if it's already somewhere else, then I'm fine. I didn't see it, but I might have missed it.
Yeah, I think it's just within pieces, but again, I think this is a good section to include. So.
Perfect. And I'm looking forward to looking at the travel policy. Other than that, that's it.
Well, so the travel policy has already been, I mean, the board approved a travel policy, which is the one that's referenced there. I do think that, you know, it's a super detailed and very complicated policy that I would recommend that the board look at. I mean, we'd like to bring some recommendations forward to simplify that a bit, but it's on our list, but it's not at the top of our list since we have a lot of other things. So at the moment, that's the policy you have.
Yeah, no, I was half joking about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to add something to it. But
It's very, very detailed, and what we learned is it's a little more detailed. It's more detailed than I've ever seen in my experience, but also in talking to other organizations, it's a lot more detailed than is the sort of the norm.
okay, that is it for me.
Director Stanley?
We're on page 11 now, right?
Yes.
I think that the travel policy resolution should be attached to this document. And I think when you bring this to the board, that the current document should be given to the board so that they can do a comparison prior to the board meeting.
So we can put a link to the resolution, but we really don't want to put attachments. We really want to, because then it becomes, there's a lot of different resolutions or references. So we can put links to them so that if you were reading this online, you could click on the link and go to them. But having it as part of the document becomes really big.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just saying that I had to request a copy sent to me because I didn't have it online, and it's a little cumbersome. I have nothing. I'm done.
The travel policy, is this the one that was rewritten earlier this year?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really, really detailed and makes it, the more detailed it is, the more difficult it is to comply with. And it's, I think what's happened is probably that they tried to address maybe some problems that came up, and it then became the policy is getting in front of every possible problem. And it makes it really difficult to comply when it's so overly detailed.
Sure.
And we'd like to look at simplifying it a bit.
The purpose of mentioning it here, we're just incorporating it by reference then, right?
Exactly, because it was included, and that again was overly detailed when it's somewhere else. And it makes it difficult when you reference the language, because if we change it over in the separate policy and we don't change it here, then this becomes outdated. So it's easier to reference something else that's a standalone.
says incorporated by reference. Then it's
Yeah.
fine. All right. And expenditures and checks. I think I'll wait for the comparison document. I had a couple more questions, but it's fine. I think it'll be better for me to wait for not the comparison document, but the summary sheet.
Yeah. We'll
It's much-
prepare, as you suggested, Vice President Suddeth, it's the memo that does the comparison, that and explains where the change was and why, and the prior reference, or if it was removed, why, or incorporated by, we'll do that, as well as presenting some of like the option A or B, depending on the rules. So we'll put all of that together. And again, as I said at the beginning, our intent would be to get this in June or early July. So we'll work on getting this in front of the full board.
So one last time, do you guys have any more questions for Ms. Lisa and staff on this document before we leave it alone? Let them go.
There was something that I wanted to ask about
Yes, ma'am.
for clarification. I forget what page it's on. It was talking about the board attorney, and it seemed to discourage anyone from contacting the board attorney. And I didn't. And I thought that was rather a chilling effect and shouldn't occur.
It doesn't say that. It says that,
And it's just staff.
Pardon?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Lisa. Go ahead.
it's on page 3, and it says that the board may, it says any director, directors may individually contact the board attorney to research an issue. The board attorney will report his or their findings or determinations to all directors. I mean, that's consistent with what it said. There's nothing about discouraging.
No, it says, it's the second paragraph under 3, I think. The board
Yeah,
attorney,
that's
board, the general manager and staff, subject to general manager direction.
Well, I think that's referring to staff.
yeah. Well, that's my concern, and the reason why I have this concern is if I think that we don't want to discourage staff to call the board attorney if they have a question, a legal question about something they are creating. And more importantly, and most importantly to me, is if staff feels that they're being harmed in some way and they wish to contact our board attorney to ask direction, they should definitely be able to do so without any repercussions.
So let me clarify that again, the staff works for the general manager, so we don't want staff just contacting the board attorney on matters and excluding the general manager. So that is consistent with the practice that's been in place. And if there is, in your specific instance of staff being harmed, they wouldn't be contacting the attorney, they would contact human resources.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to prevent is we do not want, in the same situation, don't want staff going directly to a board member, just as we don't want them going directly to the attorney to raise issues. Those need to go through the proper channels.
As I understand as well, the board attorney works for the board, not for the staff. So if the staff goes and talks to the attorney about an issue and then he can't really should be able to advise them, because then he needs to be able to advise us. And then that
Well,
might create a
he can actually
competition.
advise the general manager as well. So, the communications is through the general manager. At any rate, it really isn't an issue. But typically, what happens if staff has contacted Mick, he has typically CC'd me on the response. So if they've excluded me, he will CC me on the response. So this isn't really discouraging them. It's really just clarifying. But I do need to understand if staff are going to the board attorney. If there's a legal issue going on in the district, that is absolutely something the general manager needs to be advised of.
Sure.
If it's related to them individually from a personnel perspective, then the proper channel for that is human resources.
From what I can tell, it hasn't been an issue. I try to keep, if I hear from a staff member, I always let Lisa know I've heard from the staff member and copy her, and now typically Andrew, and as often as not Justin on the response.
Right.
So let me hear what your concern is, Director Stanley. I'm trying to hear your concern.
Well, right this minute, we don't have a problem with people who would care and protect our employees. But not so very long ago, when I was a new director, there was a lot of talk about and using the word retribution, and employees were afraid to talk to their supervisors. And I personally, myself, have been in a situation to where I called the board attorney and said, I don't want to speak to you right now. I will speak to you on Monday, and this being Friday. But I'm giving you the heads up that I do want to speak to you because I have a problem, and I want to make sure that I don't get talked out of talking to you. So I want people to have that. If they feel threatened in some way, that they can they can reach out. I'm not saying that Lisa's a problem. I'm not saying any of her staff is a problem today. But if it ever gets to the point, reverts back to the point to where people use words that shocked me into becoming a director in the first place, I don't want them to get dinged for reaching out and saying, I have a problem and I need to discuss it.
But he doesn't work for them.
Yeah, the
What?
problem is you're giving the staff the wrong direction. If they have a problem, the proper channel, if they're uncomfortable going to their supervisor, or it even is about their supervisor, or even the general manager, is human resources. It's not the board attorney. Now,
Okay.
they could contact him, but he really shouldn't be the first place they go if they feel that it's a personnel matter.
I've been down this road in other agencies, and my response has always been, have you gone through the protocol? You need to contact your union representative or whoever it is.
That's right. There's a union as well.
I could not advise them, but I could certainly direct them.
Okay. That's as long as there's, excuse me.
Which is the same thing that happens when they contact one of us, right? We send them back.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
We send them back to the district. We tell them that they need to talk to human resources and the general manager. So, I'm just trying to understand the concern myself. I get what it is, but I guess
it's just that when I started their practice setup, there was a lot of distrust and a lot of brokenness, and so but if we have things in place and we're comfortable that it's going to stay in that place, then I'm fine.
The other thing is I don't think this section was really speaking to, this is like legal matters related to district business versus a personnel matter. This is really speaking to staff going directly to Mick and not informing, you know, their supervisor or even the general manager that they're seeking some type of legal advice or some type of legal. They're empowered to do that. They just are required to let us know. They're not prevented from contacting them. What I've asked staff to do is that if they contact Mick or if they need to, I mean, I often refer them directly to Mick. Have you checked in with Mick? That they include me on that message. And again, as Mick said, it hasn't been a problem in that if for some reason they don't notify me, he will usually copy me on his response back. So I'm then notified. So it's again, it's not pertaining to the matters you're bringing up as much as it is general business of the district.
Okay.
And Lisa,
Section.
in my understanding too about with Mick is he wears two hats, right? One of them is he advises the board because he and you are only staff per se, and then he advises you for the district, which may be the same issue, but it's sort of two different pots.
Well, he is general counsel for the district, so really all legal matters. He reports to you as the board, and he works directly with the general manager via staff or me directly on the business of the district. So, I mean, he has really one hat, but he reports to one board, to the board only, but he works with and represents the entire district. I don't know, Mick, we're talking about.
I work, no, it's very simple. I work for the district, that is the client. I work with everyone in the district.
Exactly.
So I have one master and lots of contacts.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, it really hasn't been a problem. I think that part has worked fairly well.
Okay.
Yep,
Director Stanley, good?
I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, we can move on.
Okay, number 6 is matters from staff/general manager. 6A, reports on issues or matters pertaining to the work of the committee.
Justin, do you have anything? I don't have anything.
No, I do not have anything. No.
Great. Moving on. Mick?
Okay, number 7, matters from members of the board. A, reports on issues pertaining to work of the committee.
I don't have anything right this moment. We will be talking in June about some other things, but Director Cepeda?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Okay. And as our alternate, Director Stanley, do you have anything you'd like to talk about?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Okay. Next.
7B is future agenda items, informal observation and inquiries regarding the business of the district or request for placement of items of interest on a future agenda.
Thank you very much. Director Cepeda?
No future agenda items that I can think of right now.
Director Stanley?
No.
I don't have anything yet, but if we may have to revisit this before it goes to the full board. So, Ms.
You want us
Lisa,
to put it on for June?
yeah, I think we should probably look at I think we need to look at a draft of this before it goes to the full board, because we're presenting this to the board. You said maybe June, July, maybe July.
Yeah, so what we could do is clean it up, add back make the changes that have been discussed, and then do the prepare the memo and present that to you so you can look at that. And then when you are okay with that, then we can present the full, that item to the full board,
Yeah, let's do that.
if that works.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I think that'll be better. That way we're not surprised when we get to the board
Okay.
meeting.
Sure.
Director Zepeda and Director Stanley, you good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's a better way to go. All right. So, other than that, I'm good. Madam Secretary. Can you
And number 8 is adjournment.
whistle us out? Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a wonderful
you.
evening. We'll see you Thursday.